Welcome to Top Fact Animal. Horns, tusks, and tails. We often admire these incredible animal features. But in the wild, they're more than just for show. These body parts are the tools animals use to survive, to fight, and sometimes to defend themselves in the most brutal ways. What's fascinating, and a bit terrifying, is that these same powerful weapons can sometimes turn against the animals themselves. From horns that grow inward to tails as sharp as blades, or even digestive systems that pose a threat, some creatures are equipped with body parts that could end up costing them their lives. The headache from hell. Horns, those fancy headpieces we see on animals like cattle, sheep, goats, and antelopes, are more than just cool accessories. They're made from keratin, the same stuff as our hair and nails. But while a bad haircut or chipped nails are annoying, they're nothing compared to the nightmare of an ingrown horn. Just like nails, horns never stop growing and can start to curl as the animal ages. Take Wiltshire horned sheep, for example. Their horns typically curl forward, framing their faces. While most of the time, they grow out just fine, occasionally they'll curve inward, dangerously close to the animal's skull. Thankfully, some sheep end up just looking like they're wearing funny spectacles. But when nature gets the angle wrong, it can be a much bigger problem. Take, for instance, this unfortunate ram who drew the short straw in the genetic lottery. His horns curled so tightly that they eventually grew into his skull, leading to his death. In the wild, animals usually have rocks and branches to rub their horns against, helping them keep their growth in check, kind of like trimming your nails. But for this poor ram, a genetic flaw caused his horns to grow at a dangerously sharp angle, with tragic results. Genetics, however, aren't always to blame for ingrown horns. Male animals of these species often engage in head-butting battles to assert dominance. These intense clashes can sometimes cause blunt force trauma that cracks or damages horn plates. As a result, the horns can grow at strange angles, potentially causing injury or even deadly wounds to the animals themselves. That's exactly what happened to this poor bighorn sheep. His horn growth plates shifted further back on his head, causing his horns to curl so tightly that one even ruptured his nose. Talk about an extreme nose ring. Injuries like this are more common during rutting season, when males fight fiercely for dominance. If the animal already has genetic faults, things can get even worse. We see this unfortunate combination in an unlucky African kudu. This antelope had a weak left horn due to faulty genes, and during a rut, a brutal blow from its rival fully inverted the horn, leaving it completely turned inward. Incredibly, this tough kudu somehow survived the injury. But losing his sight likely didn't help when he eventually encountered a hunter. Bad genes, a bad rut, and a bad hunter. Talk about bad luck coming in threes. Wild animals aren't the only ones who can suffer from ingrown horns. Domesticated cattle can have the same problem. Most farmers, not wanting to deal with sharp horns on their livestock, will dehorn calves shortly after birth. But if the dehorning isn't done properly, it can lead to ingrown horns later in life. Another common cause is adolescent bulls fighting and fracturing their horns, leading to some seriously odd and dangerous growth patterns, like this bull with horns curving in all the wrong directions. Luckily, attentive farmers can step in and help. One farmer, for instance, uses a wire cable to carefully saw off the dangerous end of the horn, threading it through the curve and cutting without causing any harm. You can almost see the relief on the cow's face, a huge weight lifted, literally and figuratively. Boring through when it comes to big, intimidating, curving tusks, no animal shows them off quite like the babirusa. This wild boar from Indonesia has been around for over 35,000 years, and its tusks are something to behold. They might look like horns, but these tusks are actually the boar's upper canines, which grow through the skin of its face. It's believed that they evolved to protect the animal's eyes and throat during fierce battles between males, especially during breeding season when competition is intense. There's also a myth among Indonesian locals that the babirusa uses its tusks to hang from trees, waiting to drop down on females as they pass by. Luckily for us, that's just a tall tale, so there's no need to worry about one of these pigs dropping out of the sky. While these tusks may give the babirusa an advantage in attracting mates, their prehistoric design comes with some major downsides. If a male babirusa doesn't wear down his tusks through regular activity, they can grow up to 12 inches long and eventually curl back into his own skull. Depending on how deep they penetrate, the tusks can blind the boar or, even worse, kill him. Just imagine winning over all the ladies, only to be killed by your own teeth. What a way to go! Now here's a question: which fate do you think is worse? Being harmed by your own horns or taken down by your own teeth? For horns, hit that like button, and for teeth, hit subscribe. All done? Great! Now, let's move on to the next wild weapon, stuck in a rut. Instead of horns or tusks, most deer sport antlers, like majestic crowns growing from their heads. Unlike horns, which are made of keratin, antlers are made entirely of bone. You might think that sounds permanent, but antlers are actually grown and shed every year, timed with the start and end of the breeding season. While they're developing, antlers are covered in a layer of velvet skin rich in blood vessels that helps them grow. Once the antlers are fully formed, the velvet is shed in a rather gruesome process. It might look like Bambi's ready for a Halloween party, but shedding velvet doesn't harm the deer. In fact, they often eat it as a nutritious snack, kind of like the human equivalent of eating scabs. Once the velvet is gone and the antlers are fully grown, male deer, or stags, use them in intense rutting battles to prove their dominance and win over mates. During the rut, stags barely eat or sleep, and can lose up to a third of their body weight in just 2 weeks of constant battles. The injuries are brutal: puncture wounds, gouged out eyes, broken legs, and even brain abscesses from torn off antlers. Even worse, sometimes antlers get locked together, leaving stags stuck with their worst enemy indefinitely. In extreme cases, like one particularly brutal fight, a stag actually ripped the head off its rival, a savage headlock, to say the least. While fighting with antlers is risky, just growing them can be dangerous, too. Sometimes, genetic abnormalities cause antlers to grow uncontrollably. One young buck, for example, had antlers so monstrously large that he could barely move his head, constantly risking losing his balance. But that's not even the worst of it. Growing antlers have a rich blood supply, and if the soft bone tissue is damaged during development, it can lead to a blood bag effect. This happens when ruptured arteries cause blood to pool under the velvet, as seen with this unfortunate deer. I wouldn't want to be around when that blood bag bursts. In other cases, deer carry genetic traits that lead to strange antler growths, like drop tines, where the antlers grow downward or even invert. This can cause big problems during rutting season if the deer ends up getting stabbed by its own antlers. But genetics aren't the only reason for drop tines. Injuries during rutting season can damage nerves that affect how future sets of antlers grow. Even stranger, skeletal injuries elsewhere in the body can also impact antler growth. For example, an injury to a hind leg will lead to abnormal antler growth on the opposite side, while an injury to a front leg affects antlers on the same side. So, if a deer breaks its right hind leg, its left antler could end up growing in an odd, wonky way. Crazy, right? Scientists call this the contralateral effect. It happens when the buck's internal chemistry redirects resources to heal the injured limb faster, sacrificing the blood and bone that would have gone into making a normal antler. Donkeys and horses may not have horns or antlers like deer or cattle, but they've got hooves, and those can cause just as much trouble if left unchecked. Hooves are actually thick toenails that evolved from the enlargement of the middle toe bone millions of years ago. Just like human toenails, if hooves aren't trimmed or worn down regularly, they'll keep growing into curled, gnarly shapes. But these overgrown hooves aren't just an eyesore, they can have serious consequences for the animal's health. A horse with overgrown hooves will end up walking on the balls of its feet, overstretching its tendons. This can lead to arthritis, muscle atrophy, and even bone loss. Over time, this condition becomes so painful that the animals can't walk, leaving them unable to reach food or water. Sadly, in many cases, this leads to the animal's death. In domestic horses, overgrown hooves are often the result of neglect and poor treatment. Donkeys and horses, confined to tight, cramped spaces without access to hard surfaces, can't wear down their hooves naturally. Thankfully, there are always good Samaritans around to step in and provide an emergency manicure for these animals in need. Now, let's shift gears to something a little smaller but just as wild: kamikaze ants. So far, we've covered some of the large weaponry of the animal kingdom, but what if I told you that some insects can turn themselves into tiny grenades? Meet the aptly named Calabopsis explodens, a species of ant found in the jungles of Southeast Asia. Like other ant species, Calabopsis explodens colonies are maintained by worker ants, who forage for food and take care of the nest. But these ants have a special, explosive trick up their sleeve. But if the colony is ever attacked by a rival ant species, these worker ants have one final, explosive trick up their sleeve: they can sacrifice themselves and take their enemies down in a dramatic last act. Here's how it works: poison-filled glands run the entire length of the ant's body. When things take a turn for the worse in battle, the worker ant contracts its abdominal muscles so violently that it ruptures these glands. The ant dies instantly, but its sacrifice is far from wasted. The rupture sprays a sticky, corrosive secretion in all directions, trapping and immobilizing any nearby enemies. This chemical glue acts as an irritant, entangling other insects and effectively neutralizing the threat. And believe it or not, the thick glue-like substance reportedly smells like spicy curry. But don't let that fool you, it's far from edible. This nasty chemical serves as a warning to any would-be predators, letting them know that these ants aren't to be messed with. Amazingly, a similar kamikaze technique is also used by a species of termite in Vietnam. Blobby terms, sulfurous in termite colonies, about 5 to 10% of the population consists of soldier termites armed with poison-filled glands strapped to their bodies. When the colony comes under attack, these soldier termites jump into action, fighting off invading hordes. But their deadliest weapon is also their final one. These termites can quickly contract the muscles in their jaws, compressing the walls of their poison glands and spraying a thick, yellow goo onto their enemies. This sticky substance hardens almost instantly when it hits the air, like insect cement, trapping ants and enemy termites in a sticky death right alongside the soldier termite. Who knew small-scale warfare could get this intense? A fatal sting ever been stung by a honeybee? It's no fun, right? But as bad as it feels for us, it's actually much worse for the bee. When a honeybee stings, it leaves its stinger behind in your skin. That stinger, unfortunately, takes part of the bee's abdomen with it, ripping away muscles, nerves, and even parts of its digestive system. This fatal injury means the bee dies shortly after delivering its sting. Suddenly, that little sting doesn't seem so bad, does it? But this isn't what nature intended. Honeybee stingers have actually evolved with 2 rows of tiny, sawtooth blades designed to pierce the hard exoskeletons of insects threatening their hive. In those cases, bees can sting repeatedly without a problem. But when it comes to mammals, our fibrous skin snags on those saw blades. As the bee tries to pull its stinger out, it gets stuck, and the only way for the bee to escape is to rip the stinger and part of its own body away. So, while bees are tough fighters in the insect world, their stingers tragically backfire when they're used against us humans. Cannibal kids, sometimes, it's not a body part itself, but what an animal's body produces that becomes its own worst enemy. Don't believe me? Just take a look at the gruesome birthing process of African social spiders. During the breeding season, female spiders of this species produce higher quantities of digestive enzymes and gorge themselves on prey. Once the spiderlings hatch, about 30 of them in a single brood, the mother regurgitates a slurry of digested prey to feed her young. Sounds sweet, right? Well, not for long. Nothing quite like mom's homemade cooking. But the real treat? Dessert. See, the massive amounts of enzymes the mother spider produces don't just break down her prey, they also start breaking down her own body from the inside out. Eventually, she dies after serving her babies their meal, and the spiderlings will then feast on her corpse. Yep, nothing like a fresh serving of mama's own juices to help you grow up big and strong. Gross, right? Razor tails. At first glance, the flat, pancake-like stingray doesn't seem all that dangerous. But take a closer look at its tail, and you'll see something even it has to watch out for. A stingray's tail is long and whip-like, and at the end of it is a venomous, barbed spine. The venom from this spine causes intense, excruciating pain, and the spine itself is sharp enough to slice through muscle like a knife. To make matters worse, parts of the spine can break off and get lodged in the skin, making the injury even more dangerous. Injecting venom and causing a nasty infection, stingray wounds have brought even the toughest surfer dudes to tears. But here's the kicker: the stingray's barb can actually cause harm to the stingray itself. Stingrays give birth to live young, carrying their pups in a womb similar to humans. But those barbed tails are so dangerous that fetal stingrays develop protective tail caps to prevent them from slicing up their mother from the inside. If a stingray pup loses its tail cap too early, it can cause serious internal damage to the mother. Imagine if human babies had razor blades on their feet while still in the womb, like childbirth wasn't already a nightmare. So shocking famous for their ability to produce electric shocks, electric eels might be one of the few animals with a true superpower. But as Spider-Man once said, with great power comes great responsibility, and for electric eels, that power can have shocking consequences for them, too. Despite their name, electric eels aren't true eels, they're actually a type of knife fish. Which begs the question, does that make them a catfishing fish? That would definitely be one blind date to remember. But don't worry, their preferred hangouts are the muddy streams of the Amazon basin in South America, where they use their electric sparks to hunt and stun prey. The electric powers of this fish come from around 6,000 specialized cells called electrocytes that run through the eel's slender body, storing power like tiny batteries. When threatened or hunting, electric eels can release a shocking discharge of up to 800 volts. To put that into perspective, the main voltage in the US is set at a maximum of 120 volts. If you plugged an electric eel into a household socket, it would blow the circuits of the entire house, so best to leave them unplugged. But here's the catch: this incredible electrical ability can also have deadly consequences for the eel itself. If a powerful electric current were to pass through the heart or brain of an electric eel, it would kill them instantly. That's because all of the eel's vital organs are crammed up near its head, while the rest of its long, slender body functions like a giant battery. When charging up, electric eels straighten their bodies into a stiff rod before curling into a U shape, with their head positioned just slightly ahead of their tail. This is because an electric current always follows the shortest path along a potential gradient. For an electric eel, the gradient lies between the positively charged area right behind its head and the negatively charged tail. If the eel miscalculates and positions its head even a little off, zap, the current could pass right through its heart, killing it instantly. These deadly mistakes are most likely to happen when the eel is stressed or threatened by a predator. I mean, it's hard enough doing math under pressure, let alone when you're about to be eaten. And it's the kind of mistake an electric eel only makes once, because there are no second chances when you're playing with high voltage. Deadly bathroom break sloths, those adorably slow-moving mammals of the tropical treetops, seem like they don't have a care in the world. But even they have a hidden danger lurking in their routine, especially when it comes to their bathroom breaks. But in reality, a sloth's bathroom breaks are so risky, they literally put their lives on the line every time they need to go. Scientists have even compared sloth bowel movements to childbirth, with sloths losing up to 1/3 of their body weight in a single poop. Thankfully, sloths only need to take this life-threatening bathroom break once a week, thanks to their incredibly slow metabolism. Pooping is the main reason a sloth ever leaves the safety of its tree, and it's one of the few times they actually stand upright. Once they make their slow descent from the treetops, sloths do a little poop dance, shuffling around to dig a small hole to relieve themselves in. After they're done, they do another little dance to cover up their droppings with leaves before making the long, slow climb back to safety. So, if you ever spot a dancing sloth in the rainforest, he's not happy to see you, he's just answering nature's call. The problem is, when sloths leave their trees, they lose the camouflage that usually protects them. Sloths move so slowly that algae grow in their fur, helping them blend in with the treetops. But on the ground, over half of all sloths fall victim to predators, who are quick to snatch them up. So why, you ask, do sloths risk their lives just to poop? It's a life or death journey, after all. Why don't sloths just poop from the safety of the tree canopy? Well, the short answer is, nobody really knows. Some theories suggest that pooping from up high is too noisy and would give away their otherwise perfectly camouflaged location. Others think it might be a way for sloths to socialize with each other. Or maybe, they just really enjoy their weekly poogie boogie dance, it could be the highlight of their week. Rollover risk tortoises are known for their iconic shells that act as shields for their bodies. A tortoise's ribs and backbone are fused to the bone plates in its shell, making this armor incredibly tough, but also incredibly heavy. This weight slows them down and gives them that signature shuffling walk. Unfortunately, it also makes them top-heavy and prone to rolling over. Sure, it might look a little funny watching a tortoise squirming on its back, but in the wild, this can be a death sentence. A tortoise stuck on its back is completely trapped by its own shell. Without being able to eat, drink, or move out of the scorching sun, the tortoise becomes extremely vulnerable. It could die from dehydration or be an easy target for predators looking for a quick meal. Tortoises instinctively recognize the danger of being flipped over, and they've been seen helping their fellow tortoises by ramming them to flip them back onto their feet. However, this kindness only goes so far. During mating season, male tortoises actually compete to flip their rivals onto their backs. Who knew a simple shell roll could be the ultimate knockout move? Mad Marsupial August in Australia is a strange time. While many people enjoy the last month of winter, out in the outback, thousands of small, mouse-like creatures are literally falling apart. Meet the Antechinus, a tiny marsupial that takes mating season to an entirely new level of madness. If you thought rutting deer or battling babirusa were intense, wait until you hear about the male Antechinus. For these little guys, mating season is their endgame. Overwhelmed by skyrocketing testosterone and stress hormones, male Antechinus start going bald, bleed internally, and have their immune systems collapse. They become riddled with infections like gangrene, but all their remaining energy is laser-focused on one thing: finding females. These marsupials go absolutely mating mad, with sessions lasting up to 14 hours. By the end of their 3-week mating frenzy, the males are crawling around like zombies, but instead of moaning for brains, they're after more females. Creepy, right? And tragically, before they even reach their first birthday, these exhausted males die as a result of the chaos of breeding season. A single male will be able to father multiple litters, and females can give birth to up to 10 babies a season. Well, at least they go out with a bang. Which body parts did you think were the most dangerous? And which ones would you least like to have yourself? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.